My wife cheated on me with my brother. My family took their side. Now they want my money. Hey everyone! Welcome to Tell Me Reddit, the channel where we dive into the most interesting, dramatic, and unbelievable stories from Reddit. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like to support the content. It really helps us bring you more amazing stories. So sit back, relax, and let's jump into another incredible Reddit story. I always knew I was different from the rest of my family. Some kids grow up feeling like the favorite, like they can do no wrong. That was my brother Jason. From the moment he was born, he was treated like royalty. Our parents doted on him, our relatives adored him, and I was just there. I wasn't neglected, not exactly. But there was always a sense that I was the other son. The one who wasn't quite enough. If Jason got an A on a test, he was a genius. If I got an A, it was expected. If Jason scraped his knee, it was a family emergency. If I got hurt, I was told to toughen up. By the time I turned 10, I had already learned an important lesson: Jason could do no wrong. And I could do no right. One of the first times I realized just how deep the favoritism ran was on Jason's 12th birthday. He got a brand new bike, the expensive kind with all the bells and whistles. I was happy for him, until I saw my gift. A second-hand backpack for school. No wrapping paper, no celebration, just a casual. Here, you needed a new one anyway. I swallowed my disappointment and smiled, but inside, something hardened. It wasn't about the bike. It was about what it meant. I wasn't really part of them. Not in the way Jason was. As we got older, the gap between us widened. Jason was athletic, charming, and had our parents wrapped around his finger. I was quieter, more studious, and learned to rely on myself. I worked odd jobs to buy the things they wouldn't get me. I studied harder, knowing no one would celebrate my achievements the way they did Jason's. Then came high school. I got a part-time job at a local diner, bussing tables after school. Jason, meanwhile, got a brand new car for his 16th birthday. A car our parents told me I might be able to borrow sometimes. I never did. The final straw came at Jason's graduation party. He was going off to college, a fancy private university paid for entirely by our parents. I had gotten into a great school too, but when I asked about financial help, my father just shrugged. "You're a smart kid. You'll figure it out." That night, I made my decision. I wasn't staying. I wasn't going to be the afterthought anymore. At 18, I packed my bags and left. No grand announcement, no dramatic farewell. Just a quiet exit. I took out loans, worked 2 jobs, and put myself through college without a single cent from my family. And for the first time in my life, I was free. For years, I had been the outsider in my own family. Now I was going to prove that I didn't need them at all. Leaving home with nothing but a duffel bag and a few $100s wasn't easy. I slept in a cramped dorm room paid for with student loans and ate cheap instant noodles more times than I'd like to admit. But despite the struggle, there was a sense of freedom in it. No more forced smiles at family gatherings. No more watching Jason get everything handed to him while I fought for scraps. This was my chance to build something for myself. And I wasn't going to waste it. I worked every job I could find, bartending, stocking shelves at a grocery store, tutoring rich kids whose parents wouldn't blink at writing a check for an hour of my time. I took extra shifts, slept less than I should have, and still managed to keep my grades up. College was my escape, but it was also my battleground. Every time I felt exhausted, every time I wanted to quit, I reminded myself that I had something to prove. Not just to my family, but to myself. I would never need them. Then, in my junior year, I met Sarah. She was smart, funny, and had a way of making the world feel a little less heavy. Unlike me, she came from a loving, supportive family. She couldn't understand what it was like to be treated as an afterthought, but she tried. And for the first time in my life, someone looked at me like I mattered. We fell hard and fast. She pushed me to dream bigger, to want more than just survival. When I told her about my childhood, About Jason and my parents. She listened, not with pity, but with anger on my behalf. You deserve better than that, she said one night as we lay in bed, her fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm. You know that, right? I wasn't sure if I did. But I wanted to believe her. By the time we graduated, we had a plan. I had landed a job at a growing tech firm, and she was going to law school. We moved in together, splitting rent in a tiny apartment that always smelled like coffee and late-night takeout. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. For the first time, I felt like I had a real future. Then, out of nowhere, my family reappeared. It started with a casual email from my mother. Just a short message, asking how I was doing. After 4 years of silence, she suddenly cared? I ignored it. A week later she called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Jason sent a text, "Hey man. We should catch up." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. Jason had never wanted to catch up before. So why now? Sarah, ever the optimist, thought maybe they were trying to make amends. Maybe they finally realized what they lost. She said. Maybe they want to fix things. I wasn't so sure. Still, curiosity got the better of me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Jason for lunch. Just once. Just to see what he had to say. Looking back, I wish I had walked away right then and there. Because that lunch was the beginning of the worst betrayal of my life. The moment I saw Jason sitting at the restaurant table, grinning like nothing had ever happened, I knew I had made a mistake. He looked the same, polished, confident, effortlessly charming. The kind of guy who could talk his way out of a felony and still get invited to brunch afterward. But beneath the easy smile, I sensed something else. Something calculating. I should have walked away. Instead, I sat down. Man, it's been too long. Jason clapped me on the back like we were best friends, like he hadn't spent our entire childhood making sure I knew I wasn't good enough. You look good, bro. Life treating you well? I took a sip of water, keeping my face neutral. I manage. What's this about, Jason? Why now? He feigned offense. Can't a guy just miss his little brother? I didn't bother responding. He sighed, rubbing his jaw. All right. Look, Mom's been talking about you a lot lately. She feels bad, you know? About everything. We all do. I nearly laughed. 4 years of silence, and now suddenly you all feel bad? Jason leaned in, lowering his voice. Look, I get it. Things weren't fair. But you're doing well now, right? You've got a good job, a nice place, a great girl. Something about the way he said that last part made my stomach twist. Sarah's amazing, I said carefully. Yeah, Jason mused, stirring his drink. She really is. A prickle of unease crawled up my spine. Despite my instincts screaming at me to keep my distance, I let my family creep back into my life. At first, it was just the occasional text from my mother, small talk about work and life. Then Jason started dropping by unexpectedly, acting like we had always been close. And then, one night, Sarah invited them over for dinner. I think it's good that you're reconnecting, she said when I hesitated. Maybe things can be different this time. I didn't believe that for a second, but I agreed anyway. Because Sarah wanted to believe it. Because part of me, some stupid, naive part, still wanted to believe it too. Dinner was uncomfortable. Jason charmed Sarah instantly, of course. He always had a way with people, the kind of charisma that could make you forget every bad thing he had ever done. He made her laugh, asked all the right questions, and even brought a bottle of wine he claimed was just for her. I watched them carefully. The way she smiled at him. The way he held her gaze just a little too long. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was imagining things. Then came the first lie. It happened a week later. I had to work late, and Sarah said she was staying in. But when I got home, her car was gone. Where are you? I texted. A few minutes passed before she replied, just out with a friend. Something felt off. I didn't push it, Maybe I was overreacting, but the next day, when I casually asked which friend she had met up with, she hesitated. Then she said, Jessica. Jessica had moved to Chicago 3 months ago. My blood ran cold. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started watching, paying attention. And the more I looked, the more cracks I saw. Sarah had started locking her phone. She got defensive when I asked simple questions. And Jason had suddenly taken a much bigger interest in spending time with us. One night, when Sarah was asleep, I checked her phone. The text thread was short, but it was enough. Jason, he suspect anything? Sarah, not yet. Jason, good. Let's keep it that way for now. My hands went numb. My vision blurred with rage. I had let them back in. I had let him back in. And now, he was trying to take everything from me. I stared at Sarah's phone, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Jason, he suspect anything? Sarah, not yet. Jason, good. Let's keep it that way for now. My stomach twisted. I felt sick. My mind raced with every possibility, every worst-case scenario. But deep down, I already knew. I had spent my entire life watching Jason take what he wanted. I just never thought he'd come for my wife. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I kissed Sarah on the forehead before she left for work, pretending I hadn't seen the messages, pretending I wasn't planning to rip her world apart the way she had done to mine. As soon as she was gone, I made my move. I called in sick to work. Then I called a private investigator. If they thought they could play me for a fool, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The investigator worked fast. Within a week, he handed me a folder thick with evidence. Photos. Bank statements. Hotel receipts. The first time Sarah had met up with Jason behind my back? 3 months ago. The first hotel charge? 2 months ago. The last time? 3 nights ago, when she told me she was out with a friend. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I had what I needed. Now, it was time to confront them. That night I played dumb. I acted like I hadn't pieced together the truth, like I wasn't holding the evidence that would shatter both of their lives. Sarah curled up next to me on the couch, resting her head on my shoulder. You okay? You've been quiet today. I forced a smile. Just tired. Long day. I could feel her watching me, searching for any sign of suspicion. I gave her nothing. Let her think she was winning. The next day, I set my trap. Jason had texted me earlier, saying we should grab drinks that evening. He wanted to see how much I knew, if I was starting to suspect anything. I agreed. I arrived at the bar 10 minutes early and waited in the dimly lit booth, gripping the folder under the table. When Jason finally sauntered in, grinning like he owned the place, my blood boiled. Good to see you, man, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Been too long. I didn't respond. Instead, I slid the folder across the table. Open it. Jason's grin faltered. What's this? Just open it. He hesitated, then flipped it open. The moment he saw the first picture, him and Sarah outside a hotel, his arm wrapped around her waist, his face went pale. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. You always took what you wanted, didn't you? No matter who it hurt. Jason swallowed. It's not what you think. Cut the bullshit. I snapped. I know everything. The texts. The hotels. The fact that you were planning to take everything from me. His jaw tightened. I didn't. You did. And now you're going to pay for it. Jason's eyes flickered with something. Fear? Panic? Good. Let him feel a fraction of what I was feeling. What do you want? He muttered. I smirked. You'll find out soon enough. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a hotel and sent Sarah a single text. Meet me at home tomorrow at 6. We need to talk. Then I prepared for the grand finale. When Sarah walked into our apartment the next evening, she looked nervous. Good. She should be. What's going on? she asked, trying to play innocent. I didn't say anything. I just handed her the folder. She flipped through the pages, her face draining of color with every passing second. I can explain. Don't bother. We're done. Tears welled in her eyes. Please just let me. You cheated on me. With my own brother. I shook my head, my voice cold. There's nothing left to say. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. I'll have the divorce papers sent to you tomorrow, I said. And don't bother trying to take anything from me. I already spoke to a lawyer. You get nothing. Her lips trembled. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed, sharp, bitter. You didn't care about hurting me. You cared about getting caught. She didn't deny it. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. She hesitated for a moment, searching my face for any sign of weakness, any chance of redemption. She found none. Then, finally, she left. As soon as she was gone, I poured myself a drink and let out a slow breath. It was over. But the war had just begun. Jason had taken everything from me. Now it was my turn. I had always assumed divorce was just paperwork, signatures, and a clean break. I was wrong. Sarah wasn't going to make this easy. And my family, Jason, my parents, all of them, were about to turn this into a war. The day after I threw Sarah out, I met with my lawyer, David Cross. He was sharp, ruthless, and came highly recommended for high-conflict divorces. He flipped through the folder of evidence I had gathered, texts, financial records, hotel receipts, before nodding approvingly. You came prepared. That's good. I want this done fast, I said. And I want to make sure she gets nothing. David leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Legally, she doesn't have much of a claim. No kids, no shared assets beyond the apartment lease. But she might still try to go after alimony. She won't get it. He smirked. Not if I have anything to say about it. I filed the divorce papers that afternoon. Less than 24 hours later, Sarah called me. I didn't pick up. She texted, "Can we talk? Please?" I didn't respond. Then, a message from Jason, "You don't have to do this, man. Let's be reasonable." I blocked his number. If they thought I was going to play nice, they were in for a rude awakening. And then my family got involved. A week after filing, I got a call from my mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. I exhaled slowly. "Doing what, Mom?" "Dragging this through the courts. Embarrassing your brother. Destroying your marriage." I laughed bitterly. "I'm destroying my marriage? Jason slept with my wife. It was a mistake. He feels terrible. Oh, well, in that case, I guess I should just forgive them both and take them out for brunch." "Don't be sarcastic, young man. This is your family." "No, Mom. He was your family. I was always just an afterthought." Silence. Then, coldly, she said, "You're being cruel." "No, I'm finally being fair." And I hung up. The next month was a nightmare. Sarah fought the divorce at every turn. She filed a motion for alimony, claiming she had sacrificed her career to support me. Total lie. She had a job the entire marriage. David shredded her in court, proving she had been financially independent the whole time. The judge denied her request. Next, she tried to claim emotional distress. She brought in character witnesses, my family. Jason sat on the stand, straight-faced, lying through his teeth about how unstable I had been in our marriage. How I ignored Sarah, how I emotionally neglected her. I wanted to lunge across the courtroom and wipe the smug look off his face. David leaned over. "Don't react," he murmured. "We're winning. Let them dig their own graves." And he was right. Jason was a terrible liar. David caught him contradicting himself multiple times. The judge saw right through him. Strike two. Sarah's last attempt was the lowest blow. She tried to claim half of my savings, arguing that, as a supportive spouse, She was entitled to the lifestyle we had built together. David dropped the bomb. Your Honor, he said, sliding a stack of documents across the table. These are bank statements showing Mrs. Carter withdrawing large sums of money from a shared account and transferring them to an undisclosed personal account over the last 6 months. If anyone was financially exploiting this marriage, it was her. The judge's face hardened. Mrs. Carter, do you have an explanation for this? Sarah opened and closed her mouth like a fish gasping for air. The judge ruled in my favor. She got nothing. Jason called me that night. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, clipped, and furious. You're a selfish bastard. You ruined her. You ruined everything. I hope you're happy. For the first time in my life, I actually was. The divorce was finalized a week later. Sarah left town shortly after. I didn't know where she went. I didn't care. Jason stayed, but he didn't reach out again. And my parents? They made their choice. They chose him. I didn't need them anymore. I walked out of the courthouse a free man, taking a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. And for the first time in years, I was fine with that. But the story wasn't over yet. Because karma had one more trick up its sleeve. For the first time in years, I was free. No more Sarah. No more Jason. No more family guilt-tripping me into submission. It was just me and my future, a future I was determined to make better than the past. I buried myself in work. My job at the tech firm had always been stable, but now, without the weight of a toxic marriage or family drama, I put everything into it. I started staying late, volunteering for high-profile projects, making sure my name was on everything important. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got promoted. Big raise. Better office. More control over my career. It was everything I had worked for. And yet, it still didn't feel like enough. I didn't start dating again, not yet, but I did start living again. I traveled for the first time in years. Went out with friends. Spent money on myself instead of worrying about someone else's happiness. I had spent so much of my life trying to prove my worth to people who never saw it. Now, I was proving it to myself. And it felt damn good. Then, in a moment of impulsive celebration, I made a mistake. I posted online. It wasn't anything flashy, just a picture of my new office view with a caption, "Hard work pays off." Within an hour, I got a text from an unknown number. "Nice office. Didn't take you long to move on, huh?" I didn't need to guess who it was. Sarah. I ignored it. Blocked the number. She was out of my life, and I had no intention of letting her slither back in. But she wasn't the only one watching. A week later, I got a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. Then a text, "Please call me. We need to talk." I ignored that too. Then Jason called. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "What do you want?" There was silence on the other end. Then, finally, Jason sighed. "Look, man. Things have been rough lately." I smirked. "Yeah? Sounds tough." "I'm serious. I lost my job. Things with Sarah didn't work out. And Mom and Dad, they're struggling too." I leaned back in my chair. "Not my problem. Come on, dude. You're doing well. We're family." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Now we're family? Where was that energy when you were screwing my wife?" Jason exhaled hard. "I messed up, alright? But I need your help. You should have thought about that before you betrayed me. You're really gonna do this?" "I really am." And I hung up. The texts kept coming. From my mother. From Jason. Even from my father, who had never once called me in the last 5 years. They wanted me back. Not because they missed me. Not because they loved me. Because they needed something from me. And for the first time in my life, I had the power to say no. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. It started with small things. A voicemail from my mother, her voice thick with forced warmth. Honey, I know things have been tense, but we just want to talk. As a family. A text from my father, short and to the point. Call your mother. Even Jason, who had spent his whole life treating me like an afterthought, sent a pathetic message. Let's just meet up. No drama. Just us. I ignored them all. But then they escalated. One afternoon, I was in my office, reviewing a contract, when my assistant buzzed in. Mr. Carter? There's a woman here insisting she needs to see you. Says it's urgent. I frowned. Who is it? A pause. She says she's your mother? I went still. For a brief moment, I considered telling security to throw her out. But part of me, some old, conditioned part that still thought I owed these people something, sighed and said, Send her in. She walked in like she still had authority over me. Dressed prim and proper, like always, but there were cracks now, worry lines on her face, a tension in her jaw. For the first time in my life, my mother looked uncertain around me. You're looking well, she said, trying for warmth. I am well, I replied. What do you want? She sighed, clasping her hands together. I know you're upset. I know Jason hurt you. But family forgives, sweetheart. That's what we do. I scoffed. Funny. I don't remember you forgiving me when I needed you. Her expression tightened. You don't understand. Jason's lost his job. Things with Sarah fell apart. He's struggling. We're struggling. Ah. There it was. So this isn't about forgiveness. It's about money. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Your father's business took a hit. And Jason, he just needs a little support to get back on his feet. And you thought I'd be stupid enough to help him? I thought you'd be decent enough to help your family. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Let me get this straight. When I was struggling, when I needed help, you told me to figure it out. But now that Jason's in trouble, suddenly it's my responsibility? It's different. No. It's not. You just never cared when it was me suffering. She inhaled sharply. You don't mean that. I do. For the first time in my life, I saw something in her face I never thought I'd see. Panic. Jason's your brother, she pleaded. You can't just abandon him. I stood, walking to the door and holding it open. Watch me. Her face twisted, torn between rage and desperation. You'll regret this. I met her gaze, unwavering. No. I won't. And then, just like that, I was done. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because Jason wasn't finished yet. Jason was never the type to accept defeat. I knew that ignoring my family's pleas would sting his ego, but I underestimated just how desperate he had become. He had lost his job, his money, and, most satisfying of all, Sarah. And now, he was looking for someone to blame. And, as always, that someone was me. The first time I saw him after cutting off my mother, he didn't look like the Jason I remembered. His clothes weren't as crisp, his cocky grin had been replaced with something desperate, and the arrogance in his voice had softened into something closer to begging. Hey man, he said, showing up at my building like a stray dog looking for scraps. Got a minute? No. Come on, he pleaded. Just hear me out. I sighed, stepping outside. I wasn't doing this in my office. You've got 2 minutes. Jason ran a hand through his hair, his usual confidence crumbling. Look, I know I screwed up. And I know you're mad, but we're still brothers. And things have been rough for me. I just need a little help. Alone. Just until I get back on my feet. I stared at him. You want me to loan you money? After everything you did? He had the audacity to nod. You've got plenty, man. Just a little. A couple thousand even. I'll pay you back. I almost laughed. You must be delusional if you think I'd ever give you a dime. His jaw clenched. I'm trying to fix things here. I'm swallowing my pride and coming to you. Swallow harder. I'm not helping you. His eyes darkened. So that's it? You're just gonna let your family suffer? That's exactly what I'm gonna do. I turned to walk away, but he grabbed my arm. I need this, man. You don't get it. I yanked my arm free. No, you don't get it, Jason. You spent your whole life making sure I had nothing. Now it's your turn. His face twisted into something ugly. You think you're better than me? Just because you have money now? No, I said, stepping closer. I've always been better than you. You just never noticed. For a second, I thought he might hit me. His hands curled into fists. His whole body tensed. But then his shoulders sagged. You're a real piece of shit, you know that? I smirked. Takes one to know one. Jason stared at me, hatred and helplessness warring in his eyes. Then, finally, he turned and walked away. I watched him go, a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I won. I thought that was the end of it. But I should have known better. Because Jason wasn't done trying to sink his claws into my life. And the next time he reached out, he wasn't alone. Jason wasn't done. A week after our last encounter, I got another unexpected visitor. This time, it was Sarah. I opened my door to find her standing there, looking like she had rehearsed this moment in front of a mirror 100 times. Her makeup was subtle, just enough to make her eyes look sadder, more remorseful. Hey, she said softly, like we were old friends catching up. I didn't reply. I just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. She sighed. Can I come in? No. A flicker of irritation crossed her face before she masked it with another pitiful expression. Look, I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I just wanted to talk. Talk. I let the word hang in the air. Like how you talked to Jason behind my back? She winced. I made a mistake. I smirked. Yeah? Which part was the mistake? Sleeping with my brother? Lying about it? Or showing up here thinking I'd give a damn? Her lips pressed together, and for a second, the fake sadness slipped away. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. No, you wanted something, I corrected. So cut to the chase. What is it? Money? Sympathy? A second chance? She hesitated, and that was all the confirmation I needed. I shook my head. Unbelievable. I lost everything, okay? She blurted out. Jason's broke. I'm broke. And I know you don't owe me anything, but... I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. You actually thought I'd help you? She looked at me, eyes wide. I thought you were better than this. That only made me laugh harder. That's rich, coming from you. Her expression hardened. You don't have to be cruel. And you didn't have to cheat on me. But here we are. She took a shaky breath. Please just... I shut the door in her face. I thought that was the end of it. Until I got a letter in the mail. From Sarah's lawyer. A request for additional spousal support. She was trying to take me back to court. I called David, my lawyer, immediately. She's out of her damn mind, he said after reading the letter. She's got no legal ground for this. She already lost in court. She's grasping at straws. So what do? We make sure she loses. Again. The court date was set. Sarah showed up with her lawyer, looking fragile, like she had been through hell. Good. Her attorney made some weak argument about how she had been left, financially stranded, and needed more support. Then David stood up. Your Honor, he said, flipping through his papers. I have evidence that Mrs. Carter has recently been spending excessively at luxury retailers, taking multiple trips out of state, and interestingly enough, has been in contact with my client's brother, Jason Carter, discussing ways to get more money from my client. Sarah's face turned white. The judge was unimpressed. Mrs. Carter, he said, you were already denied spousal support once. Given this new information, I see no reason to entertain this request further. Case dismissed. Just like that, it was over. Sarah stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me. Jason wasn't there. He was probably too embarrassed. I didn't care. Because now, they were both out of my life for good. I left the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. One last battle remained. My family. With Sarah and Jason finally out of my life, there was just one last loose end to tie up. My parents. I knew they wouldn't let things go so easily. They had invested too much time and energy into protecting Jason, making excuses for him, making sure I was always the one left in the shadows. But now, their golden boy had crumbled. And I was the only one left standing. A week after the court hearing, my mother called again. I almost didn't pick up. But some part of me, the part that wanted to end this on my terms, answered. "Hello? We need to talk," she said immediately. "As a family." I exhaled slowly. "We stopped being a family the moment you chose Jason over me. That's not fair." "No? Then tell me, Mom. When Jason stole from me, lied to me, slept with my wife, where was my family then? When Sarah tried to drag me through court again, where were you?" Silence. Then a sigh. "Your father is sick." Ah. There it was. The guilt card. And we just want to make things right before it's too late." I let out a humorless laugh. "So now that Jason's ruined and Dad's sick, you want me back in the fold? We want you back where you belong." "I never belonged," I said coldly. "And I never will." "You're really going to abandon your family?" I took a deep breath, letting the finality of it settle. "No, Mom. You abandoned me years ago. I'm just finally returning the favor." And then, for the last time, I hung up. That was it. No more Jason. No more Sarah. No more parents trying to manipulate me. I was free. Months passed. My life moved forward. I got another promotion, moved into a nicer place, and started seeing someone new. For the first time, I wasn't living in anyone's shadow. For the first time, I was truly happy. One night, I got a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed this family." I smiled and deleted it. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't care. The end.